Hello, my name is Richard Gill and welcome to this edition of Landmark Video News. September 2016 sees the launch of the second Serviced Office Industry Sector Reports, which was commissioned by the Business Centre Association. The first report was issued in October 2014 and provided the first comprehensive insight into the industry. To tell us about the second report, I'm delighted to be joined today by the Head of Research of CBRE, Miles Gibson, who undertook the research and put the report together. Along with Miles, I have Executive Director of the BCA, Jennifer Brooke. Can I ask you a little bit about the diversity of the sample itself, because flexible workspace, it now ranges from light industrial units over here to service, to managed, and even to co-working spaces. Can that really all be grouped together under one heading?
Well, increasingly not, actually, and we found during doing this research for the BCA that it's become increasingly difficult to say that there is such a thing as a homogeneous serviced office or managed office sector. There are as many models as there are operators now. It is a sector where 1,000 flowers are blooming, and the reason for that is that operators are being very responsive indeed to the needs of their customer, and the customer is getting more demanding over time. They like what they see. There's really quite intensive competition in the sector now, and so the customer is king and is driving very, very rapid experimentation and flexibility in the kinds of offer that the customer can get. And therefore it's quite difficult to start to pigeonhole operators into some very simple categories now. That was a task that we had to try and do in our research, but it's important not to oversimplify the characteristics of what is a very rapidly growing and flourishing sector.
Yes, no, that's really interesting. You mentioned pricing a couple of times, and one of the aspects that came out of it, of course, was the relative comparative pricing to conventional leasing, which has come out very much in favour of the flexible workspace sector, has it not?
That's right. It is in fact difficult to do a like-for-like comparison because by definition you're not buying the same thing. You're buying flexibility and you're buying a short lease when you enter into a managed office or service office contract, and by definition that's not the same thing as the more traditional 10 to 15 year leases. So the comparison is difficult to make, but certainly as close as we could get it, there was a sort of 30%, 25% discount for serviced or managed office space in that sector compared to the traditional sectors.
Looking at the three main takeaways that I took from the research report, first was the growth of the sector that we've mentioned a little bit. Second might be the competitive pricing, which again we've mentioned, but the third big element is the length, the typical length of stay. Has that changed significantly?
Yes, it has. Customers are staying longer. And they're also growing and staying more as larger businesses than they were in 2013. And I suspect that trend, incidentally, will have continued since. That people arrive in a serviced or managed office space, they like what they see, they're not sure about their future just yet, and so they just decide to extend for a little longer, and they turn into semi-permanent residents. They may well be there for 2, 3, even 4 or 5 years before they make a choice they've decided they're big enough to move on to more traditional kinds of space. So yes, as you say, we found longer stays and larger businesses staying.
I think it's also important to recognise the corporate sector, how that they are now using the space very constructively. It's no longer as a last resort alternative to the traditional lease. They are making a very informed decision, corporates, to use flexible space. As Miles quite rightly said, they've got the ability to expand, contract as projects dictate. They no longer have to be in a situation where they've got the capex of a building, but they can actually come and go and use the space depending on the projects that are based in a particular time. And that just doesn't reflect London. That is happening in the regions as well.
From an industry operator point of view, the really important aspect for us is the dissemination of this information. So the report is fantastic. And just looking to the future a little bit, Jen, the intention is to undertake a third report later this year, beginning of next year.
It is our intention to look at 2015 and 2016. We are in conversations about combining 15 and 16. We're in a very different place in 2016 to what we were in the last 12 months, and I think it's important that we look at the changes, if in fact there are dynamic changes of occupiers within our sector post-referendum, and when certain things have been put in place by our government as to how corporates react and how small businesses react and their length of stay in flexible space. I think Miles would concur with that.
Yes, and I think it's really worth emphasising this point about the relationship between uncertainty and flexibility, that we are in uncertain times, and that means that the big corporates as well as small businesses will want flexibility, and that may well be very good indeed for this sector.
Well, certainly for the moment, the sector's enjoying a boom time. Mm-hmm. Time to celebrate, Jen. I gather we've got an opportunity to celebrate in November.
Yeah, and that's when our industry get together. It's when our occupiers have recognised the great and the good, the best of service within the sector, and have voted for the best business centre, the best operators in the sector, recognising how an operator has added value to their business, how they have supported them, whether it be by events, whether it be introducing them to like-minded people within their environments, and those that have small groups, introducing them to potential customers within their business portfolios.
It's a fantastic opportunity. Tickets are on sale now.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for joining me today to run through the details of this new report.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
That's all we have time for in this edition. Please do join me again.